I'm sorry. Chris had done that, and every time I really enjoy that intro. So again, thanks to Not Jay for doing that. So tonight, this episode 14. It's crazy, 14 episodes, and I feel like I just started. And we have Ryszard back with us, which is a pleasure. And he's got a gold bow tie, so he can talk about that here in a second. Quick update. I'm still in the process of collating the entries for the postcards from the front, the original jam, to get sent off to the Dietz Foundation. Just a bit more than I thought it was going to be. So still working on that. We'll get that taken care of. I think we're up to 14 entries in the card jam. So still plenty of time there. Nothing to announce on that front. Just keep working on your designs. And I know some people like to design before they enter. So if that's you, cool. You got till October, so no sweat, right? And then next, I'll turn around and be like, "Oh my God, we're running out of time." So let me go. And again, I thank you guys for showing up tonight. I had a business event in LA yesterday. It was a good event. It was a networking, but I didn't get home. You can probably see it in my eyes are red. I didn't get home until midnight, and then I was up at 7 o'clock working. And so, yeah, I'm a little tired. But hey, we're adults. We got day jobs. Let me go real quick. Meandering Mike was here early. He was here yesterday. No Thursday live stream this week. I thought I had told him, but hey. Got New York Raider fan. Let's go. Good vibes. Always love to hear from you, NY Raider fan. Nagawa says, hi, everyone. Hey, boss. Tolomicus says, happy 14th. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Oh, and a quick show update note. Next week, we will have David Thompson on. So that'll be a really good chat. I'm looking forward to talking with him. And I kind of want to, I'm trying to do something a little original with my questions for him because I'm sure he gets asked a lot of the same things. So we'll see how unique my questions will be next week. No promises. Nagawa says bow tie tends to not get caught in the machinery.
Yep.
Okay. True story. I was a drafter and I used to like to wear my ties, but there are things called blueprint machines. And you're putting big things of paper. And if you took, so we'd have to tuck our tie in or flip it over our shoulder so it didn't get pulled into that big machine, which, yeah, gets caught in the machinery. And there we go. Here's Mike. Greetings all. And then, yeah, baby, David Thompson rocks. He definitely does. And I know that he's got another battle card game that they've been teasing on X or Twitter or X Twitter or Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. So I do. We'll see if we can pry some information out of him about that. I'm not sure we will. Until Mike says, yeah, but the regular ties point to important places. And you're assuming that the bow tie doesn't. I guess it doesn't point anywhere unless you count the
angles or
yeah
extremities.
So with that, what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to talk about Ryszard's, I don't want to call it your first game. If it is, you can correct me, but it's a game that, and he'll get into, that he had designed. But we're going to kind of focus on the co-designing aspect. So if you're designing with a co-designer, what that experience is like. I've got a little bit of that experience. Ryszard has a little bit of that. We kind of want to share that. And if you guys in chat have done any co-design, love to kind of get your feedback on that. And that's maybe something we can talk about with David next week because he does a lot of co-design, right? So that would be interesting to just kind of get his take on that topic as well. And then we'll kind of dive into kind of thematically with our current jam is card-based and just kind of what Ryszard's design philosophy or approach is when designing a card-based game, specifically war game, but card-based game in general. So with that, I want to welcome you back, Ryszard. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for
And
having me over.
yeah, and you want to give us a little backstory on why it's a gold bow tie?
So I guess I will start with the bow tie because even the comments on in the chat are concentrated on ties and bow ties. I do not know how it is with everyone else's gaming groups, but with my face-to-face Californian gaming group, I brought in a proverbial saying that I was taught years ago by Polish wargamer. We the translation of the expression goes, "We are not playing for golden pantaloons," which basically means we are not playing world championships. So if you want to redo your movement, take back your move, or look for this combat factor that is missing for magical 3 to 1, you can, because it's we are not playing for golden pantaloons. Now you may be aware of the disco apparel, but one day with my Californian group, they liked this golden pantaloon expression. They liked me allowing them to take their take backsies too. Anyway, there was an idea that during one of those meetings we could just organize a kind of telling sign that we belong to a single group. So we did several times custom T-shirts. We were looking into acquiring golden pantaloons for every member in the group. It's a problem, I will tell you that. First, the expense, because you have to get a golden pantaloon from the disco era. They are there, but second problem, war gamers and sizes. We all have slightly different sizes. With t-shirts, it's slightly easier than with trousers. So in the end, it was decided by me that the bow ties are the easiest, and they look fancy.
Oh,
People
they
look
definitely look fancy.
peop, people look at the bow tie and they do not see war gamers. They say, "Who are you? What are you doing here?
Are
What is
you
this?"
a professor of something?
No, no, but I do look more intelligent. It's not only glasses, right? Anymore. So this is why the golden bow tie. Now there is a group in California. You can encounter them if they will wear those bow ties. Eventually, you may see some gentlemen with golden bow ties. Maybe in GMT weekend in Hanford, maybe in Southern California, Orange County. I do not know. Maybe San Diego. I do not
Yeah,
know.
maybe. Well, and and ironically, California is the Golden State.
Yeah, yeah, and we are playing for golden pantaloons in the end. Everyone wants to win.
So, okay, I'm going to just throw out a suggestion because that's what I do. Maybe what you should do, if there's any type of competition amongst your group, that there is one pair of golden pantalones that you pass on a yearly basis to the appropriate winner of such an award.
It's a good suggestion, but in conversation with my friends, it was the problem of the dimensions that really made us wonder about the waistcoats, vests, more than trousers. And yeah,
Oh, see, pantalones, I thought was just pants.
they are, they
Okay.
are. But I don't know if anyone wants to be seen at the gaming space with golden pants only. Maybe, maybe. I'm not going to say that everyone wants exactly that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, why don't we, on that note, let's kind of dive into. I think we've exhausted the golden pantalon bow
So
tie for the
we
moment.
started with a joke. Today one of the reasons why I'm here is that I want to talk about the game that I'm partially responsible for, and it has the long name At the Court of the Great King. The links were given on the Discord server, and the game is available through each, mm, and maybe some other means just as well. I think about my presence on Board Game Geek or some Facebook groups, but it's still, I think, not recognizable design. It's not finished. It's not Yes, not gold Capri Pants. I would not go this way.
MC
No.
Hammer.
Uh, can't touch
Anyway,
this. Can't touch this. Can't touch this. Anyway, the game doesn't roll off your tongue, but I wanted to name this way because I was listening to the King Crimson a lot last year, and I thought, oh, everyone will get the reference. No one commented about the At the Court of the Crimson King. No one. So maybe people do not listen about this. I myself I call this court game just because the name is shorter, and maybe the name needs to be changed. What is so interesting, or maybe what I want to talk about when it comes to this game, is that it is a game that I am not personally responsible for. So there is another person, Tyrell Lore. He's a fellow co-designer for this thing, and if I would be designing this game by myself, the game would not look the way that it does. And for me, this was my first co-designing experience, and it was just amazing something that actually works, and that something that this co-designer added something that I couldn't do on my own. And it's not only just ideas that I couldn't come up with, or I haven't come up with, but basically, yes, it's his child just as well as it's mine, and it's our child now, and we want to see it grow and flourish.
yes.
So this is one thing. This is probably not a war game, but nevertheless it uses the card driven mechanic. So it's basically a card game, and you have cards and counters. Now, what this game is, why is why I'm so afraid of calling it a war game? Because it's not. It's a card game that doesn't care about the historical accuracy, sequence of events. You are not playing even with. This is not a game about commanding armies, fighting battles, or conquering. This is a game about group of court of the one historical king, Antioch III, from Seleucid dynasty. We are talking about 4th century BC. If you remember this Hellenistic king that was fighting with Rome, Battle of Magnesia, using Hannibal as a military advisor for the navy. This is the King Antioch III called Great. And the game what for me is special about it, you do not play as a king, you do not play as a country, you play as a group of interest trying to control a part of the court and gain the most influence or glory or victory points
Mhm.
from other factions. This is something that I find in recent years very interesting in that those what we used to see in war game industry, that there are games where you play as allies in Second World War, or as United States,
Mhm.
or maybe as, I don't know, Roman Republic in Punic Wars. Suddenly, there are games like Pericles by Mark Herman, where you are playing actually as factions within the city state. And suddenly, yes, we have two players playing as Athens, but then there can be only one Athenian winning in the Peloponnesian War. So you start to see that those political or military entities, they are not mm, unified, they are not monolithic, I suppose. And you see those inner I'm sorry, I'm entering my lecturing mode, and I'm trying to find the most complex language. You are seeing basically the inside tensions within the political or military organizations, and this is what I find fascinating. Even if I cannot convince anyone, and I don't want to, that this card game is a war game, I find this approach to the historical subjects very interesting. So this is I guess, my, forgive me, dear audience, this is not much of an elevator spiel or pitch of the game. but this is what this designer finds interesting about his baby, I
Yeah.
suppose. The so this co-designing thing, I need to, because let's start with maybe this co-designing angle, I suppose. This, I do not know how many people among our audience have the experience of designing something, anything with with other people, but I must say that this card game is my first, and it was quite a positive experience. Now, because the game, it's not like I have come to designing this knowing that I'm getting myself, or willingly going into myself, because the game was designed as a part of Consim Game Jam second edition. And dear audience, you may not know about this. Fred Serval, a designer known from other titles, but also a kind of a luminary in online community, wargaming community. Mm, he came up with the idea of organizing a weekend-long jams where people are grouped together in somewhat random fashion into teams, and they have 3 days to come up with playable prototype on a given theme of the mechanic. The theme for the second jam was card driven game, and I was paired up with another person who I came to known as Tyrell Lore. And I I I mean, and we had those 72 hours to decide are we making a game about, and what game it is going to be.
Let me ask
Uh,
you a question, not to interrupt you too much. I'm going to try to stay out from under your feet. But
you're fine.
so so basically, in this particular game jam, you're randomly paired up, and you start from scratch with a game idea, and have 72 hours to design and submit your game. So
It
not a lot of pressure there.
it doesn't have to be finished. It has to be playable. So whatever you come up with, it doesn't have to be final product that is going off to the printer, but it has to be, the parts needs to be moving, right? The to this randomness in pairing, there is one key, because we are always grouped together in accordance with our time zones. So because I reside in California, I was not paired with any people from Europe, for example, or Asia. Just
Okay.
because when I was going to bed, they would be coming up, and no, you do not collaborate like this very well. So I was paired up with people who were living relatively close, so to speak, in terms of the time zones. But I didn't pick Tyrell, and Tyrell didn't pick me. We just had this initial day to decide what we are going to make a game about. And I'm afraid that when it comes to the card game, I won this struggle, this conversation. The idea and my fondness of ancient bits kind of prevailed. But Tyrell idea was, for example, a card game where you play as the powers at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, and you basically try to create your navy, design, construct, and basically field battleships, cruisers, and things like that. Using basically components of those vessels, you come up with your own kind of things, and you try to field them like this. Uh, Using cards. So this idea maybe wasn't touched upon by us, but you can see from this, you can say, or you can see already one thing, that in co-designing thing, uh, conversation is important, or communication is important.
Very much so.
because even if Tyrell allowed me to go with my topic or subject or idea, it doesn't mean that I was always that my opinion always prevailed. And what I actually found out soon enough, because I had only those 72 hours, the most exciting thing was actually about brainstorming together within those constraints,
Mhm.
and just trying to build upon those initial decisions. We decide to make a game about courtiers, and courtiers trying to gain the most brownie points at the court of one historical king, and what we can do about this. Other constraints that the gem put upon us was the constraints on the number of the cards. I think it was no more than 51 or 52, and no
Okay.
more than 52 components, meaning markers, dice, anything else that you want to put into your game. You just have to have those around 50 cards, around 50 bits, and this is what you have. No mounted maps, no anything, just that.
Okay.
Uh, so working within these limits, it sounds very intimidating. 72 hours. There are two people on my team, and I am one of them, because this was our reality, and we have to provide. No, well, good news is that when you co-design, it's not only you that you have to provide, and all people on the team work. So actually, you can divide the workload. And constraints, this is also something that I want to tell to the audience. Constraints help. It's okay to go over, but at least constraints, I can the framework. They
Mhm.
give us something that we can build upon, or build around. Because, for example, not everything has to be a card, not everything has to be a marker. And when you have limitations, when you are forced to think about the limitations that you are working under, you can actually come up with some inventive ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, dear people, to go to consume game jam and expose yourself. You may not want to do this 72 hours, but people do this, and they are having fun. And sometimes we can meet those other people within our time zones respectively, and just establish contacts, budding friendships. Forgive me, Tyrell, but this is what happened. The I wa- I know that one of our talking points for tonight was, for example, the card war games. I have never created a card war game before. And when I have found out that we actually are supposed to create a card war game or card game, I didn't know. My goodness, to create a deck like 50 cards, how do you do this? The the co-designer helped. The
Yes.
co-designer helped, and the approach that I didn't come up with was to basically, and it wasn't my idea, which just shows that I'm one trick pony. It's all ancient Greeks for me, and probably hexes and counters. But to create a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet,
Mhm.
and n- prepare the names, possible names for the event cards, but basically express each event or effect as a kind of mm, three, maybe two effects. So you have always the operation points. In our game, they are from 1 to 3, and most likely the highest, the cards with the highest value are the least of them within the
Mhm.
deck. There are events that affect the game state. There are basically resources in this game, to say in the most simple terms, and when you play the event, the value of those resources change. Either resources go up or go down. And what I didn't think of when I was intimidated by the perspective of creating 30, 50 cards in a deck was that you actually can put all those values in the Excel spreadsheet and just see try to balance those changes of those values across the 50 rows and columns. I know that this is not very, can I say sexy on this channel?
You already did.
It's not the most interesting maybe
Okay, now
approach.
now that you said that, hex to hex is probably going to show up.
If I can conjure him, I will be saying this word even more often.
Fair enough.
So we'll be counting minutes, I suppose. In any
That'll be
case,
funny.
this approach may not seem like it's not the most ingenious, but once again, in this code designing environment, it was the one that I didn't think of, and it was something that basically allowed us to field those 50 cards no problem,
Mhm.
honestly. And even if those changes in values, operation points on the cards, they vary between 1 and 3, the changes to the values, they vary between -2 to +2. So you have -1, +1, and the combinations. But actually, my biggest fear of not being able to provide the content for 40, 50 cards was basically mitigated by this kind of, maybe it's craftsman approach.
Yeah.
There is nothing glorious about it, but it really made it possible to provide the content for the
Wait, wait,
entire
wait,
book.
wait, wait, wait. Let me stop you there. Are you actually saying that there's nothing glorious about game design?
About creating the Excel spreadsheet where you balance the values between, all the, I am not, I do not like mathematics. I like to talk about ideas. I like to talk about the literature and concepts. The numbers do not excite me. I'm sorry.
No. Okay. Okay.
And statistics are also not my thing, but they are the asset that Tyrell brought in to the
Okay.
design. So from that, and for this, I will say this will be on the record now. I am eternally grateful for this, because when you, I guess that my co-designing experience boils down to exactly this. You are exposed to other ideas of other people, of other person, that
Uh-huh.
may not be thinking like you exactly, that may have different skills or proclivities, interests than you. And by golly, but by the end of this weekend, the design was better. When I remember the pitch that I don't want to talk about very long, that I made on Friday, to the game that we had on Sunday evening, I mean, it was much better than my pitch. Really, it was. It
Well,
was.
I think you bring up a few valid points there. Um, you have to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you went into this, your first co-design, did you have any preconceived notions? How did you approach the first time there was pushback to one of your ideas? What emotionally were you like, huh? When I designed myself, I don't have that. Did you experience that? And if you did, how did you deal with it?
I I there is online recording of our conversation because of the Discord. So even if people do not have the access to my Discord account, I have the access to those exchanges with Tyrell. So I think that there is the evidence, when it comes to our conversations. But we had to communicate with each other. This was obvious from the start, because I just was not able to carry the entire idea in 72 hours. So it was obvious for me to say to see that I need to cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned in your question this kind of uh, freezing effect. I'm in love in my ideas. I don't want to do anything to them because they are mine, and they need to prevail.
Yeah.
But but the thing is, I knew that because of this time constraint, and because I knew that there is no one else in our team that will push this idea further. Basically, withdrawing would mean leaving this other co-designer in dire straits, right? Do it yourself because I am not going to help you. So by the because of the time constraints, I want to say that I was how to put it nicely, because I do not want.
Influenced?
Yeah, I was motivated to cooperate. So basically, this weekend on the Consim Game Jam, it looked more like collaboration and brainstorming rather than pushing for certain angles or negotiating that this has to go, this has to be featured in our design, or this all, or I'm taking my things and I'm going to a different sandbox. I don't know. So
But
so
that's a reality that could happen.
true,
And I
true.
actually have experience with that on a fairly significant project, but I can talk about that in a little
I
bit.
Well, what I wanted to say is that I do not. It's not like I am the. It's not that I always make great decisions, but for one reason or another, for that weekend in August last year, because this was when the Consim Game Jam second edition happened, uh, I decided to basically, if he agreed to my subject, I can let go in other elements. And because we both gave ourselves the space to uh, take our ego maybe away, or just not be really fixated on all our ideas, because we we were fine both with brainstorming, we were actually able to discuss ideas that ended up in the final design, or maybe in the iteration that is currently available. And and for this was the biggest takeaway from this experience, giving yourself the chance to listen to this another person and their ideas, and try to implement and elaborate on those ideas. Once again, I mean, Excel spreadsheet, nothing glorious, but it helped us tremendously. And if I would be sitting entire 72 hours, entire weekend uh, on my four letters. Yeah, because in my native tongue
On
it's
your
four
golden
letters.
pantaloons.
I don't have them. This is why I'm showing off with my golden bow tie. Anyway, anyway, because we were able to communicate, we were able to build upon each other, we were able to finish this entire thing within those 72 hours. So so one at the end of the process, I was just surprised. Okay, I like the way how I think about ancient Greeks, but 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 really have to tell that the game that I was pitching on Friday was just not so. It wasn't great. The product of our co-design was much better. So this is my defense.
Well, I think, and from my experience, um, that you end up with a better design when you have multiple people, depending on however many you have. And I think there's a limit. And I can talk about Mythic. We started with 3
Mhm.
co-designers, and it worked for a while until it didn't, and then there were 2 of us, and the 2 worked. Um, and not to get into specifics, but there was a conflict on some pretty key components on how we wanted to move the design forward, and it was a mutual decision to go from 3 to 2.
Okay.
And when you are designing something that is creative and that you might be passionate about, and you do have other people involved, you have to, in my opinion, what you had mentioned, is kind of set that ego aside. And in our situation, it wasn't so much about egos as there were some strong beliefs on the direction on how we should do things that got to the point of the the very famous um, creative differences. And so yeah, that was difficult. But to that point of where we got, when the three of us were working on the game and got it to that point, all three of us were contributing and combining, and would not have been as good without all of the contributions. Um, and so, yeah, sometimes you're going to run into a situation, and you just have to resolve it. And every case is different. I had a situation where I stepped off a design team
Mhm.
because, and now this was when I was a little bit younger, and it was in San Francisco, and it was literally business ideas. So this was, because DC culture is very big in the Bay Area. And these were where people would get together and think of a business idea and literally go from concept to a pitch deck. And I just couldn't believe in that particular business
Yeah.
approach. And so I just said thank you and stepped out. And so, from my experience, if you're in a situation that you can't work with, it's a game, or it's not. It's at the end of the day, it's not, unless it's an actual business. Um, just step back, reevaluate. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. You don't need to create drama. Just step out of that situation and move on. There's plenty of other games you can design. And not to derail
Yeah.
what you're saying, because you had a very positive experience. And 9 out of 10 of my experiences, at least, are positive. But I don't think we would do justice to this topic if we didn't talk about a little bit of the conflict and strife that can arise when
Mhm.
people who are passionate have a difference of opinion and you come to an impasse.
And let's be frank about this. If you are designing with another person who is not a clone of you, you will have differences
Mm-hmm.
between you. It really becomes a question, an open question, and maybe a topic. How to negotiate with other human beings in the office environment, because it's always around us. It's not only within the design teams, really. In my case, I was blessed that we didn't have there wasn't anything at stake really with this design. If I would say that if my co-designer would say that my idea for the game is not the game that he wants to work on, I would say, let's go with this navy building game.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of providing the historical research and bringing my education into the bit, I would be doing performing slightly different role in this design. but
Yeah.
but once again, it wasn't my day job. It was just really an attempt to answering the question whether we are able to provide something that works within 72 hours. And there were only two of us. It's only 72 hours. I do not have to speak to you after those 72 hours, right? If it will come to that. So in this case we are blessed. So I think that some of your experiences that you mentioned, they come from the, well, economical reality as well.
Well,
uh,
I don't want to overstate it. The
okay.
one where it was a weekend kind of jam thing, where you got together with a group and you designed a business and then a pitch deck, and you had to go through all the steps of how you would market it and all sorts of things. And
Mhm.
um, when the product was defined, I just didn't think it was viable, and I did not want to spend the next Saturday and Sunday working on something that I
Yeah.
didn't feel was a legitimate. Because here's the thing, it, these types of events sometimes actually lead to the creation of a company.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not uncommon to have these types of events, and out of it, you'll hear, "Oh, this business started out of a, a jam," for lack of a better term. And so I was looking at this as potential livelihood, potential business, and I knew early on that I personally just could not support
Yeah.
that concept, and so I just stepped out. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't make any drama. I just didn't participate in that particular jam that week. But what I'm getting at, and to your point, um, don't stress over this stuff. It's go in with an open mind, and you're going to more often than not come up with a better experience and a better game to kind of pull it back into the game aspect. And so with David, who's my co-designer now on Mythic and has been from the beginning, there are times where him and I will go back and forth for an hour on something. But we always come to an agreement. And as a general rule of thumb, if we don't agree, like if he says, "Oh, I want to try X," and I don't like it for whatever reason, or
Mhm.
I suggest something he doesn't like, we've agreed upon, well, let's play test it.
Yeah.
Maybe my bias against that could be swayed by playtesting it and prove that maybe I'm right, it doesn't work, or whatever the case may be. Or I may actually playtest and go, "Oh, you know what? That is actually fun. I do enjoy that." So we just, as a general rule of thumb, if we come to an impasse, we just look at each other and go, "Playtest it."
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it works really, especially
Yeah.
if you are exposed to the ideas that are not your own.
Hmm.
There is always this natural kind of, I, what is this reaction?
Yeah.
But I know this also from this card game, that the ideas that Tyrell brought about, or maybe I tried to bring something to for Tyrell, when we are able to actually put it through the hoops, play through the round and see how and if the game changes in any fashion. I mean, this was, yeah, this is how you can, this is how you can resolve those differences.
Yeah.
And I also want, because with Golden Bowtie I feel compelled to always end up on positive note. I also want to say that even maybe it's Thomas Edison quote about the finding multiple ways how the something doesn't work, but we can learn even from the failed projects, or maybe the outcomes that are not necessarily, do not end up with finalized product. It's
Hmm.
also a learning experience, because then you know what you do not want to do, what you will not do, and what maybe doesn't work, maybe for you, or maybe in general terms. I i want to say that in my case, I decided that even if this game is about Hellenistic courtiers, who knows that much about Hellenistic courtiers? This could be senators in Old Republic in Star Wars universe. This could be a game about about the managers under CEO,
I
negotiating
had
for
a theme. I was going to wrap your game with a skin of outlaw biker gangs.
it could be something like this, but I just don't I want to have it about, ancient Greeks. I want to
Yeah.
have it about this particular court, even if, once again, it's possible to do the reskin, and the game, the system is flexible enough, and it's really not simulation. It's not very strict when it comes to historical sequence. So you can replace the titles of the cards, you can replace the
Hmm.
names of the resources, you can change the symbols, change the visuals, and it would be working as a game. It would be just not at the court of the great king.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with. I think theme though. Uh, so, how do I say this? The statement you just made, I think, applies to, I don't know, a movie. right? You
Yeah,
could, let's take, I don't know, Seven Samurai or the Magnificent Seven. Is that not the same story? One of them is samurai and the other is cowboys.
it is.
Yeah. So,
In a way.
and we could do maybe one about street gangs or one about Romans or Greeks. Magnificent Seven Greeks. You see, my point is whatever we're going to wrap things around, but that's important. I think theme is very important. And so, especially because as we're playing, we want to take ourselves and think of ourselves in that theme, which brings some enjoyment to playing the game. You've played my hunting for Bigfoot. That could very easily be hunting for treasure at the bottom of the ocean,
Yeah.
or going to the mall during Black Friday to find good bargains and running out of money. And I wouldn't enjoy doing that on any level, me personally. But the concept of going around and proving Bigfoot exists to me tickles the imagination.
Yeah.
I left Mike's comment up here because I wanted to just kind of. He says, some people design as art, some design as math, and he puts engineering. So apparently, in Mike's world, there is no art in engineering.
Well, it's an art with capital let A, which means that I think we are talking about subjects
I know.
of
I'm just
public
giving.
education.
I'm just busting his chops a little bit, Buzz. Stacking Limit has joined us. He says hello all, and he says hi to Mandarin Mike. And Telemachus says the seven ancient philosophers. See,
I
there we
don't
go.
remember. I don't remember all the names. I'm sorry. I'm not prepared. I'm not
That's
prepared.
okay. That's okay. That's okay. No, so let me ask you this then. So um, you go into this 72-hour game jam.
Mhm.
You have a concept of a game. You get an unknown to you at the time co-designer, and all I'm hearing is positive, 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 which is wonderful to hear. Where's the game now compared to where it was at the end of those 72 hours? Have the two of you worked on that subsequently? I think I know the answer, but at the end of the 72 hours, did you kind of go, hey, that was fun and it's kind of set there, or are there other plans? And what have you guys done since the end of that jam with the court of the great
Great king. You
great
can
king?
call it. You can call it court game. You can call it any other name. It's all right. I like King Crimson music, but I guess that it just doesn't roll off your tongue
I
really.
didn't make the connection. I apologize.
No, don't be. And most likely you are not the only one. I thought
Well,
that it's
now that you've got a music tied to it, the great king is either Elvis or Michael Jackson. So I'm confused.
in any case, by the end of those 72 hours, what we had was a two-player game with 30. I'm sorry, I do not have enough fingers. 30 event cards and the remaining cards were used for different purposes. But it was a two-player game, and it and there's that. Now the now 1 year after we have a three-player mode,
Oh,
four-player mode. Yeah, let's take away my thumb, I suppose. Four-player mode, and we added the deck. So right now, if we finished around 50, right now we have 70, 71.
okay.
The cards have changed their visuals. I, can I present something?
Yeah.
So this is. I will try to give me a moment. I will just try to share. I do not know how to um, share a screen window. Okay. So this is one of the event cards that how it looks right now. What 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 was before was just the operation points value, title, and the events that were mostly written in sentences. or maybe this X resource plus one, glory plus one.
Okay.
But over the time, we went with the colorful visuals and symbols like this blue banner and some laurel wreaths and like, and also the something that you mentioned before, that in case of the mythic, the subjects, strikes your fancy. In my case, i I wanted to go with this game to try to promote mosaics or the ancient artwork.
Okay.
So the illustrations for the events are basically kind of stolen from all over the internet. Whenever there was the mosaic from the period, I just took it. But the it is also my hope that with this visual design, you can you can see it suddenly it becomes not only the game about uh, ancient courtiers, about some ancient kingdom, but you actually see the mm, everyday reality or maybe artistic representation of
Mm-hmm.
the lives back in the past. Uh, yes. So this is one of the reasons for me that is so important. The idea of choosing those mosaics as a kind of guiding mm, thing, guiding concept in the design.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it strengthens the design, or at least it helped me to produce the final look of those components.
Oh, we could do a whole show on art and its effect on games. Uh, I am a big believer and we talked earlier about theme tying you in and allowing you to connect with that world in your
Yeah.
imagination. And I think art accelerates that. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. Good art just the mind just explodes, in my opinion, to the theme.
Yeah,
Um, and so,
I agree.
yeah, the fact that you're going with art of the period just draws you into feeling like you are again in the constructs of a game, but mentally you go there, and that's part of the entertainment value. It's not just the mechanics.
Yeah.
You got mechanics that are fun to do. You're trying to accomplish something, and it's a puzzle. And you've got the art which adds to it. And you've got the background story, and you've got the theme. I think all of that woven together. And Mike had used the term master craftsman, and I think that that's the mindset that we as designers are when we're crafting a game. We design it, but I like the term crafting better. It just sounds a little more polished, maybe.
Uh,
It makes me feel more important than just designing something. I'm crafting it.
it's something that it's not only Excel spreadsheets, certainly, and not only balancing the numbers. In
Yeah.
this case, because you asked where when the game, or rather where the game was 1 year ago. One
Yeah.
year ago, this card was black and white, and it didn't have those colorful blue banners and those kind of purple stripes. It just didn't. So from the perspective how the game plays, whether you have a black and white card or colorful card, kind of doesn't matter. You can have
No.
a colorful card with bits. But over the time, what we try to do with our design is to basically simplify the symbology used on the card. So instead of words like glory, which means basically victory points, you have those symbols. And suddenly the I or, or tissue. in any case in any case, the what I found interesting is to try to another this visual design, something that I am also interested in as an amateur, how to make things work on your components, and
Yes.
how you can easily, or how you can facilitate the player experience. They do not have to speak English, they do not have to maybe they have the visual impairment. They cannot differentiate the colors, and
I was
suddenly.
actually going to ask if that blue and purple for somebody who's colorblind, if that's even visible.
So we did try, or maybe I have tried to make some adjustments, and this hue of the blue wasn't, in the first iteration. I still believe that the game is not successfully turned into the colorblind friendly game yet.
Okay.
But
I
but
wasn't being critical. I was just, you brought
it's
it up, so I pointed it
it's
out.
not about being critical. For me, this experience is when I decide how the components in my game look. Question is, can I find out how I can make it easier for other people to use my components? So
Mhm.
for example, which colors do I choose? Which colors do I avoid? Should I make the symbol bigger or smaller? Outline, highlight, there are all those kinds of effects. And throughout the last year, I was trying to learn about this a little more. And there are resources available online, especially when it comes to the color impairment,
Yep.
and which assets to use and what to avoid. I'm not going to say that I am proficient or I know everything about this, but I know more than I knew 12 months ago.
Exactly.
So this is progress in
Yes.
the end.
Yeah. To kind of that point, um, the version of Mythic you played, on the cards, there are points on the bottom and there are symbols on the top.
Mhm.
And what I found is what people typically do as they're collecting their cards. I won't go into, if you can go watch other videos to get a little more description, but it's a set collection. And when you have your evidence in front of you and you're organizing your area, I found that all that information should be either all on the top or all on the bottom, not spread between the two, because that way you can stack your cards, and see
Yeah.
everything on the top or the bottom. And it wasn't until we had play tested it and play tested it, and then finally it just dawned on me, well, if I just move this without changing the actual image,
Mhm.
if I just moved them all on the same vertical plane or horizontal plane, excuse me,
Yeah.
then that little aspect of organizing my cards in my play area, which has nothing to do with playing the game, but it is part of the experience of playing the game,
Mhm.
makes it more organized and easy and less of something that's going to maybe frustrate you and take you out of that experience of playing the game. So I've redesigned the cards, or in the process of redesigning the cards, with that design aspect in it.
Yeah. I think that it's one of those things that come out in testing, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can design a card how it looks like and what is where at the top, at the bottom, but until you will actually use those components, and I do mean in practical fashion,
Mhm.
try to use them in game, you may not realize that you can make it better, or you can improve some aspects of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And bringing it back in line with the co-designer, sometimes they see things that you don't. And you had mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to kind of highlight this point, that when you have somebody that you're working with and it's truly a cooperative experience, it's their baby too, which means they are looking out for the best, in their opinion, on that design.
Yeah.
And when you're in sync with your co designer, now you've got, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 is like 4 or 5 or 6. It really does bring out so much more of the game than just simply 1 + 1 = 2. Um, and so if you haven't co-designed, try it. I think it'll improve you. What I'm hearing from you, Ryszard, is a number of things that you've learned through this experience that has made you a better designer. Is that true, or am I just hearing
I
things?
I would say this. I would save it. Just this. I will save this word again. Spreadsheets. Just this spreadsheet thing. It's something that I usually avoided as much as I could. Making charts, okay. Making lists, fine. But Excel, really, I avoided in my whole life, and now it gets back. But
Well, there
but
are a number of tools like Excel. I actually, because of my programming, my software engineering background, I did a lot of my early designs and still do. I put them in Access, which is a low level database, but it's kind of got the same functionality as a spreadsheet, except I can make multiple tables and join them and do queries and whatnot. It's just a visualization tool that I use. And there's, oh, I'm going to forget the name, but there is a very popular program that I believe is free that's used a lot in card game design, where you can put your cards in. It's kind of designed around people who design card games. And I'll have to look it up. If I find it, if I can remember what it is, I'll put it in the show notes. Um, but a lot of people, especially in the hobby side of game design, that's kind of a default tool, even before using Access or Excel. And besides me, I don't know of anybody that's used Access to design a game.
well, but so in my case, it's not really about the Excel or any particular software. It's just that I never used spreadsheets for creative purposes. and and
Ah, okay.
and now after this year, I have realized that, for example, if anyone in the audience is familiar with desktop publishing, like PageMaker, InDesign, and things of that sort, I realized that, especially when making cards for games, I can use spreadsheets to populate data quickly and efficiently into the right fields of the cards if I will set up things right. I do
Yeah.
not need to punch in every single word and plus and minus into the manually. I can just click it, copy paste it, and it's in. If I format it right, it's going to be working. So
No,
there is some
agreed.
power.
So you've worked. So the one question you haven't addressed is, does your co-designer also have a golden bow tie?
I'm sorry. He lives in a different time zone, and he is not a part of my face-to-face gaming group. That's the problem.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
You have
so
standards.
or we are exclusive group, it seems. Uh, you asked also about where we are right now in our design, because
Yeah.
after the jam has ended, we realized that this game works. It's not the most, it's not the masterpiece, but as a game it works. So it would be nice to continue working on this and see how we can expand, elaborate, improve. And this is what we went with in the coming months. We stayed in touch over Discord. We exchanged files and played together on Tabletop Simulator. I'm sorry for this product placement,
No,
but but
that's why this podcast exists to some degree. So product
but
place away.
but Tabletop Simulator did help us to be able to quickly modify the prototype and basically put the new versions of the cards, even if you need to change a value of
Mhm.
on a single card. On Tabletop Simulator you can do it quickly and kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
With Vassal, you have to send the new Vassal module to the person,
Oh,
or something. So it's just easier this way. And we stayed in touch. We are still in touch to this very day. So the designing kind of didn't stop, has not stopped. It's
nice.
just that there are always health issues or family uh, business, so it's not like we were constantly in touch, and every week there was a business meeting and development and testing. But I suppose that right now, where the design is, if you haven't seen this game, I want to say, and you do not have to believe me, dear audience, but I want to say that this game is relatively simple as as procedures go and the mechanics go. The simple means that you can add more elements, you can expand, you can give more modifiers, more events, more cards, more everything. But at this point we are kind of, I Tyrell isn't with us today, and but I want to say that, so at least this is my take on the situation. We do not I do not feel the need to add anything more to the existing game. It works, and given that one of my main selling points of the design is that the game is playable underneath 30 minutes. It is. I I don't see the reason of adding more cards and making the game go longer than that. Really, if it works, it doesn't have to be exact simulation of the Hellenistic court. And once again, historically speaking, it's not the most accurate representation, even with our
Let me
limited
ask you a question. You said
knowledge.
it was originally a two-player design.
Yeah,
You've now got it three and a four-player.
yeah.
Could you make this into a party game where you had eight players?
The I was thinking about expanding the number of the players into five, but it kind of
Breaks down.
it didn't work because the game consists of basically this: every player has 3 or 4 cards, and in your round you play one, and when the deck runs dry, it's the game over.
Okay.
So if I want to ensure that there are equal amount of rounds for 2-player game, 3-player game, 4-player game, 8-player game, how many cards do I need in a deck if every player will have 3 or 4? It's like mathematic problem. Between the 2-player game and 4-player game, we add 4 cards. I'm sorry with my fingers. I'm always showing wrong number. We had 4 cards. For the 4-player game we had 10 cards, and I'm afraid that for the 5-player game suddenly we need to add like another 10 cards. And if you are ever as a designer wondering how many cards my game will have, I wonder, do you want to have 150 in your box? Because I didn't do the math, but
Have
if,
you not played a collectible card game before?
yeah, but
150 cards is nothing.
in a single box
They
as a
make they make card boxes for baseball card collections that hold hundreds of cards.
and one of those, in last few days I have seen a Yu-Gi-Oh deck that was, I think, several feet long, before they made some regulations that reshuffling the cards are limited in construction of their decks. So I know that it's possible,
Yeah.
but really the way that the game functions right now, if the game is finishes when the deck runs dry, we would have to add multiple more cards for to cover for those other people, and those people who haven't played this game, this is going to be a very strange thing to say for a designer. Our game is very volatile. This means that in 2-player game it's kind of easy to control the balance, but in 3-player game or 4-player game the situation on the table may be quite very different when the game comes to you. And it this volatility was always by us co-designers treated as a kind of feature, not a bug. There are multiple ways to upset the balance on the table. It's just that when you are in a multiplayer game and you cannot do much in the meantime when the game is passing through other players, you either have to provide those players with some kind of, I don't know, reaction cards, some way of interjecting themselves to protect their position on the game in the
Mhm.
game, or basically keep it lean and mean and just do not increase over a specified number of players. I must say that I went with, because I was afraid of deck bloat thing.
Okay.
It's difficult to bring the game effects with the new cards. It's difficult to provide enough of the historical context for multiple cards, where every card is supposed to allude to some kind of historical event, or more or less important, but not fictional. And when you have the big deck like this, yeah, it 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 became difficult. Plus, I think that making it into a party game would require changing the deck and maybe even the
Yeah.
mechanics of the game considerably.
Yeah, and the reason I bring up a party game, and it's kind of a prequel to next week talking with David Thompson, is, and I'm sure he's not the first, but he's pretty well known for the fact that a lot of his designs are not what you would call traditional war games,
Yeah.
but are more of a hobby game set of mechanics wrapped in a war game, which I think is wonderful. Um, and so, one thing that's very popular in the hobby space are party games. And I started thinking the other day, I can't think of any war game that's a party game. And so I asked the question because that type of game, which deals with a lot of player interaction, I'm assuming that it deals with player interaction, you're a courtier,
Hmm.
um, would lend itself to being a party game or could be a party game, right? And you've got the metagaming of I'm going to partner with this group or this person to get this thing pushed through court that might help both of us, but works against my enemy, who in 3 turns is my ally.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, you started with a 72-hour time limit in a 2-player game. So it's unrealistic to think that you could easily keep that design as is and expand it to 8 to 10 players or whatever you define a party game would be. But I wanted to ask the question because you did say you could add more cards, you could do this, you could do
Hmm.
this. And so in my head was, no, maybe this could be expanded into a party game. And by the way, hi to Walkabout Games. Stacking Limit said coup. Coop. Coop. Coup. I think it's coup. I don't think you pronounce the P.
I do not speak English. You can pronounce it both ways, depending on which language do you
Coupe
use.
de Ville.
Honestly, but but
That has
but
an E.
the title brought up by Stacking Limit and also your question, it could, you could imagine making a game like this, or even another title. It's not a war game, but it's an interesting mm, example, I think, to discuss. Love Letter.
Yes.
I mean, Love Letter, maybe because of the visuals or some titles of the cards, it looks like it's posited or placed in particular historical period and not any other period. But there are some rare skins of Love Letter. I think Cthulhu Love Letter. There is it does exist. Uh, Coup and the werewolf or mafia
Yeah.
sort of games. They also can be done like this. I do not know, and dear audience, I don't want, without going into the details how my game, my design plays. I I will not be able to explain why I don't think that the party game would format would work for this particular design. But there are certain mechanics that simply do not make it quite feasible for me. If you would be willing and if you would have time, there seems to be a playtester podcast in the coming future where the example of the game will be shown as it is with the
Well, let me
current
clarify
iteration.
that. Richard and I are going to get up for us because we live in California. We're going to get up early, 8 o'clock, I think. I think is
Yeah.
what we agreed upon. And we're going to go on Tabletop Simulator. It's going to be on the Playtesters podcast. I will put all that stuff out tonight. And we're going to play his game. And if anybody would like to join us and make it a 3 or 4 player game, you'll need Tabletop Simulator, which is around $20 normally on Steam. And you will I'll have a link on my Discord. I'll put a link also in the description here. I think there's already a link to the Steam version of your game. You want to go subscribe to it, have Tabletop Simulator, and then I will be putting up a game room. It says Hissy Cat Studio or something. You'll be able to recognize it. And the password is just Hissy. And so if you want to join us tomorrow morning, again, 8 o'clock, assuming we're both awake and there, which we should be, we're going to play the Court of the Great King tomorrow. And that's why we're not going to get into a lot of screenshots and things like that tonight, is because we are going to follow on and play it. And you guys are welcome to join us and play the game and give some feedback. I mean, at this point, it's still, I guess, in design, technically, like all games are. So kind of with that in mind, and where I wanted to go with the next question is, what are your aspirations? What are you and your co-designers' aspirations for this? Is this something you want to get published? Is it something you're just going to continue to design and it's served its usefulness as far as learning and how to do a co-op game, how to do this type of game? And you don't really have any aspirations to get it published, or are you looking to get it published?
Aspirations and ego. Now we are talking. In any case, because the game, in my opinion, it works. Once again, it's not the masterpiece. It's not the academic book or research or anything, but it works. I do want to try to get it published, which means that what we are looking right now, what is happening right now outside of this podcast, is I am trying to wrap up finalize the components. Finalize being a funny word because it simply means that I want to create a kind of as complete pitch packet as I can before sending out this packet to companies. And this is
So will this
happening.
be a GMT weekend or at San Diego Histocon?
Yes, if only I would be planning of participating personally in those events, then yes. The only thing that for personal reasons it will be easier for me to contact some of those companies, including GMT Games. I said it out loud. Contact them outside of those GMT weekends and see if they would be interested or not. I mean, once again, there is no shame in trying, and
No.
I always can receive some advice, feedback, or impressions. Even they also will be appreciated. So once
There's
again,
always self-publishing as an avenue as well, to some degree.
True, but one of the things that we want to try, you have seen this a single cat tonight. The one of the things that we want to do is also to, if the game is going to be published, we would like to receive some kind of support when it comes to the visual design just as well, because once again I am self-taught person, so, and I do not have any certification. I never professionally, I never worked in the desktop publishing of any sort.
Right.
It just didn't happen. So I would feel happy to learn from the companies that can provide such kind of support. Basically, show me how this other person would do this,
Right.
if possible. Right now, you may have not noticed this, but for example, one of the challenges for me myself when I was creating the components was that I was using images under different various licenses. When you are doing this, for the self personal use, it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you are starting to think about commercial product, suddenly you may find out that the images that you are the most fond of maybe are not the ones that you are going to go with in the
Exactly.
end.
Yes.
So once again, when you are the amateur, it's fine and dandy to just access those images available online for free and use it. You can, because no one is earning anything from it. But if and when, so so for this reason, it's not that we cannot go with the self-publishing route, but this kind of support, we would like to have it, and maybe, just maybe, would be interested in publishing a game that consists of 71 cards and, I don't know, 60 some counters, and this is it, and you can play underneath 40 minutes. Yes, you can.
Well, there are. I mean, at some point, maybe we'll start to on this show here um, highlight some of the requirements of various publishers. I think that might be useful for this community.
Mhm.
Walkabout Games says art can be some of the biggest costs. Uh, with my Mythic game, I think I ballparked if I was paying $100 an image, which is probably on the lower side for many
Yeah.
artists, that it could cost me as much as, oh, I had 50 odd unique images in my ideal version of the game where I wasn't taking. You've played the game, you know that there's a thief on 4 or 5 teams, but there's unique art and they have
Yeah.
unique names. But functionally, they're the same card. I didn't just want to have a generic thief that everybody
Yeah.
had the same image or the same name. And so there's 5 pieces of art just for the thief. And I think when I did the math, it came out to like $20,000 plus for art,
Yeah.
which that is a barrier. And outside of doing a crowdfunding campaign, um, it's prohibitive
a
for
single
amateurs.
a single person would not be able to fork out that amount of cash specifically for just art.
Just
Uh,
art, and then and if the game doesn't fund, you're out a lot of money. And then this is probably a topic for a whole nother show. Um, and I know it's controversial, but I've been playing with AI art to help lower that barrier. And again, I'm not going to get into it tonight. That's just there's a lot that goes into that topic, right?
I
But
can, if you want, I can give a teaser when it comes to the AI
have
in the
you
graphic.
decided to try it with your prototype art?
So in court game, we have actually used AI graphics in few parts. So you have seen one single card. The mosaic is the historical, authentic one, but there are some cards that I couldn't just find any anything. So I will show you two cards in a moment, and you should be able to tell which one was the illustration made by AI. So first card, let me see. Boop, 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 boop. Are you sorry, fumbling with the, now it opens. Now it's visible. So this is one of those illustrations. The style looks as it is, but a different card, maybe something like this. I do not know how quality comes apart, but can anyone, can you, Hissy, tell which one is AI and which isn't?
Honestly, go back to the first one. Let me take a look. That looks like AI.
And yes, you are right. Yes, you are right. I can provide AI of
Now,
any sort.
having sorry to interrupt you, but having said that, not knowing what the quality of art is from that time frame,
Yeah.
that was just a pure guess. And I looked at the hand, and the hand looked like it has 6 fingers, which is notorious for AI art.
Not to say the face, for example, also looks a little bit different than the
Well, I kind of
faces
looked like that in high school, so I wasn't going to
on
comment.
others. But it does, when you have multiple cards, you can see the difference between the quality of AI. And it's, once again, it's very easy for us, budding creative people, to provide the uh, prompt for AI.
Mhm.
Ancient Greek mosaic or ancient Roman mosaic and illustration of, I don't know, wine pitcher or something, and
Right.
something will come out of this.
Do you use Mid Journey?
I still don't. I logged in to just test, but the Mid Journey was never used by me in any project.
Which one do you use? I'm curious.
So
Stable
the
Diffusion?
the disgrace card illustration came from the open DALL-E, DALL
Oh, Dali?
slash,
Okay.
yeah.
I've been using Mid Journey, and I find the quality of the images are very good. Just FYI.
And honestly, what I have seen in terms of the resulting images from Midjourney, it's very interesting. It's actually very tempting when it comes to produce to use the artwork from such
Yeah.
sources. There is, you said it yourself. I find the AI something of a topic of completely new discussion. Should we use it? Should we not? And why? It does help, because once again, there is a difference between having a black and white card and the colorful art. Uh, but when I think about those starving artists, sometimes sometimes I reconsider. And at least in my case, I usually can uh, find artwork from the period
Sorry, I'm back.
in under open license, even
Yeah.
if not all mosaics are available like this.
So let me get caught up in chat real quick. Walkabout Game says my total today at a meeting was a rough estimate of 35 grand. Now, he's talking about his, I think it's move to contact or movement to contact. We had him on last week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was last week. Um, and so he's looking to get some of his art. So he's got a number of comments on this. Says most of my art will be AI on the cards and the cover, and a few will be an artist, which I think is one way to go, right?
Yeah.
I actually have one piece of art in Richthofen, other than the photographs, that I paid an artist to do, and it's the 2 aircraft in
Mhm.
combat. That cost me $250. So my $20,000 estimate was off $100. So that 20 could easily be $60,000.
Yeah.
I won't make $60,000 on that game. So I'm either going to have to get a publisher to purchase and want to publish Mythic, or I'm going to have to hand draw or use AI art for it to ever see the marketplace. He also says a lot of my internal art will be by my miniatures, but AI enhanced. Nice. And he says he uses Mid Journey.
Yeah, it's one of those things why if I would have a choice, I would rather go through the companies, the publishing companies that can provide, that can solve this problem by themselves. That
Yeah,
would
but
take
there's a
this.
cost to that, right? And as long as you're willing to accept that, and I'll give you an example. When I was looking into the economics of getting a game published on the board game side, most board game publishers will publish either they could they get their games done in um, China, and they I think a typical run is either 5,000 or 10,000. I think it's
Yeah,
10,000 copies. So they look at your game and go, "Can I sell 10,000 copies of this game?" Now, if they're a big publisher, I'm not sure if war game companies, and there are a few, would be considered big publishers like, say, Cool Mini or not, as an example. As a designer, and again, I'm just going off of what my research was. Don't take this as gospel, but you could expect to get about $1 for every game that's sold. So if
yeah,
they printed 10,000 copies of your game, which would be a normal run, and was successful, you'd make $10,000 as a designer.
hmm,
So why would I spend 20, 30, $40,000 on art when I'm only going to expect to make, if I was to just sell the design, a fraction of that? And Mike kind of says designers are more likely to starve than artists. And so again, this can be another whole topic on using AI art, not using AI art. I know it's controversial, and I'm looking to I want to play with everybody. I want to be, which what's the old phrase? If you try to please everybody, you're going to please nobody.
hmm,
I may be guilty of that. Walkabout also says my niece is doing some of my art, and she's giving me a deal. Nice. And he says my niece is using AI for idea boards. Yeah, I think AI art, if you're not using it commercially, I don't know of many people that are going to complain, much like what you were saying earlier, using copywritten art in your prototypes. As long
yeah,
as you're not making money, most people are not going to make an issue about that. Maybe Disney, but they've got some IP I mean, there's a difference between protecting IP and getting into using AI art to make Batman is not cool. That's an IP infringement.
yeah.
Regardless of how you do it, I can hand draw it and it's still not cool. And he does say war games are smaller print runs. I'm assuming war games are probably in the 500. We see a lot of companies with their, well, I forgot what they're called, but basically they're looking for 500 pledges to print a game. So
Or they offer print on demand services.
yeah, that's different. Um, But if you're going to go print 500 copies of a game as a designer, even if you got $2 a game, you're going to make $1,000
Yeah, and the costs of the art are indisputable. Yes.
after 20.
That's good, right?
What he's saying is, if you heard his story, COVID kind of got him back into doing his design. And the fact that there's AI art is now going to allow him to produce the art for his game. And
Yeah,
it's card driven, and there's quite a few bits of art, much like my Mythic game. And
yeah,
the thing that's kept me from self-publishing it, because I think it's ready, is the fact that my art skills are not on the level that's going to be professional enough, in my opinion,
mhm,
to really sell the game. And I would love to have an artist come in and do the art. But again, unless I can give them a piece of the pie, and even then, artists are probably going to make more money just doing the art and not caring whether the game is a success or not. So again, I'm getting deep into this, and like I said, this is a whole nother
Oh,
topic.
don't worry. The best thing I think about our conversations is that if anyone that is listens to our talk tonight and on the other days, he they can be exposed to all those. important things that you have to think about, that you have to consider if
Mhm.
you want to design a game, and it doesn't have to be a war game. Those are all the facets of the business, I suppose, or maybe
Yeah.
the parts of the process that you have to somehow resolve, find the answer to. How do you want to go about this? And and on the other hand, you said this yourself tonight a few times. You just keep unearthing multiple ideas for the upcoming shows, because
Yeah.
it's maybe 14th episode, but we are not running out of the things really to talk about.
No, I
We
don't
don't.
think. Well, there are so many things that we can talk about. And one of the focuses that I've wanted to do with this particular podcast and the whole postcards from the front, and you know this, Richard, we've had this
Mhm.
conversation, is to provide for designers of all flavor, whether you're a professional or an amateur, whether you want to get published or you just want to play it with your friends. That hopefully what we talk about inspires you or helps you move that design along in whatever fashion that might be.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Also, my reason to be here. Also,
And I appreciate it. So let me go back here real quick. Meandering Mike says GMT has P500. That's what I was trying to remember. Thank you,
yeah.
boss. And it's targeted minimum of 750 print run, prefers about 1500. And obviously, when you have more copies you can print, the price per copy comes down, and if it sells, there's a higher margin for profit there. But again, I think if you look at the ecosystem, the designers are the last to get fed and get the scraps in general. And so if you're going to go other than self-publishing, and there are tools like AI art that's going to get a lot of designers to start looking at that to get their babies created, right?
Mhm.
Because they're going to, like every other human, to some degree, we are self-serving. And if the only way I could get Mythic done and feel like if on a business sense, is to use AI art, I'll consider it. So
It's certainly difficult to consider designing of games as a career. Well, maybe I should say designing board games as a career.
are any games? Well, there are a handful of designers that are fairly famous, and if you happen to be fortunate enough to get a game of the year at was it the Spiel? I don't know. That's German for game, I believe,
Yeah,
right? And there's the Spiel is the great
yeah,
or whatever.
of
I'm
the year,
sorry. Yeah,
the game of the year
the game
award.
of the year. You're probably gonna make a nice chunk of change on that. And again, there are some big publishers, and you see some Kickstarters that raise $1 million.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, once you get into all the economics of that and the costs that are paid and the printing, and what the trickle down effect is that gets to the designers, um, there's a reason why the more popular designers don't have just one game. It's like the music industry. You're one hit wonder. You occasionally somebody designs one game and could make a nice chunk of money, but it's not going to be a living, I don't think.
Nor does it happen for everyone.
It's still under 10 grand. There you go. Oh, I jumped to this. One of my friends is a professional writer. He writes RPGs, and his first Kickstarter was only 2,100 books. Okay. He says his last one was larger, but still under
Mm.
10 grand. Yeah, it's a grind. And I think for most of us, and you bring it up, Richard, I don't think we're doing this as a profession. Now,
Full time bit, no.
somebody like David Thompson can speak to that, and we don't need to ask him how much he makes. That's just crass. We're not going to go there. But obviously, he's got a day job, so that tells you something. Even as successful as he is,
Yeah.
and so it's we would like to get published because we want to see our name in lights and have our 15 minutes of fame. Quite honestly,
And besides, when you spend time on any creative projects, it always feels kind of embarrassing to put it back into the drawer, which in my case and in the card game case, this is the reason why we want to try try to get it published.
Yeah.
There is what's the worst that that can happen? No one would like to publish our game. Okay, fine, but at least we can try and pitch it around just
Yeah.
as well. And eventually, if we will solve this open license or other licenses on some of the images used in the components right now, I mean, we can go with self-publishing just as well. We can go onto Wargame Vault or something to
Mhm.
make it print and play sort of. Yeah.
Well, and I'm again, shiny object syndrome. I'm totally guilty of that. But my Coast Watchers game, my plan for that is to just publish it on Amazon. And at some point, we're going to talk about book games
Mhm.
and what different types of book games you can design, whether they're partial print and play, whether they're games like what Worthington does, where they're all self contained, all you need is a dice and a pencil, or something that I'm envisioning. I think that there's an untapped market that somebody like a Mike Lambo, I picked up his last Sherman, which I'll be playing on the channel, but learning about the different ways to get published. So I plan on doing a whole episode. Again, we got plenty to talk about in this niche of ours, but it talks about how you can self-publish. And the nice thing about it, and because I've got some coloring books and things like that, I get a thrill out of going onto my Kindle or my Amazon account and saying, today I made 42 cents on some work that I did 2 years ago. And I have one little book that I make like $1.20 on that I sell 2 or 3 every month. It's just this little evergreen. And I'd like to have 1,000 of them, but I have one, and it makes me from 4 to 6, $8 a month. It's not going to change my life. It's going to buy me a beer.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of accomplishment in taking something from concept through design and publishing it. And then when somebody buys it, you get this validation that somebody actually paid money for something I created. I can't explain it. It's just it's an awesome feeling.
So forgive me for saying this because I have a sweet tooth and I like to crack jokes. This may be a crash joke, I suppose, or maybe it's not meant to downgrade what you just said. But when it comes to creative work, the parallel that I usually use for my own purposes, for my own mm, for myself, is baking cookies.
Yeah.
When you bake cookies, they do not have to be the best cookies in the world, but they didn't exist before. And now that you made them, you can enjoy them, others can enjoy them, everyone that is around can enjoy them. And it's the same with our writing or other creative ventures.
Yeah.
The games that we design, they do not need to exist, but we can make them happen, and then you can take a step back and see, this is what I have made.
Yes.
It's mine. It exists. I brought
So
it into being.
on that point, I got that exact feeling, even though I didn't design them. 48 games from Postcards from the Front, the first game design jam. And I look at those 48 as my babies to some degree because I helped. Obviously, I didn't design them. I didn't have to go through everything that's involved in designing one of them was mine. I'll take credit for my one, but had and again, it's not all about me. There's a number of things, a number of people that help facilitate this. But the fact is, if I didn't start the ball rolling, other people would not have carried it. And 48 games exist this year that did not exist last year.
Yeah, yeah.
And that to me is just blows my mind that I was instrumental in helping create 48 games. I'm nobody. I'm a nobody. Come on. Ryszard is somebody. I'm a nobody.
Well, I'm a person with a golden bow tie.
Which is somebody. And I know even though we can't see what's beneath the table, I'm pretty sure there's some gold down there. I'm just saying.
Uh, um, 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 anyway, there is some nice feelings about creating bits and make it accessible to others, regardless whether this will spell financial prosperity for my family. It's just because investment is mostly time and effort.
Mhm.
Nowadays, it feels like there is no loss in trying and just make it game accessible as the card game, I mean, specifically as a commercial product
Yeah.
somewhere out there. I also, but once again, this is my personal motivation, I suppose. I still believe that we do not have, as a gaming community, enough of games about ancient Greeks. We can have
You've been
we
very
can have
vocal about that.
we can have more of them, and not all of them has to have to be about Punic Wars, Roman Republic, or Athens and Sparta. So yeah, the topics are there for plucking.
This is Chablis, my 16-year-old.
Welcome.
Yeah, she's starting to get a little frail on me, but mentally she's all there, and she wants some attention. Move
And
it.
it looks like she has written some message as well on the keyboard.
Did she? She might
Well,
have.
there was a little bit of clacking sound.
Oh yeah, no, she's famous for that, like most cats are. See, that's why the logo is a hissy cat. One thing also I didn't bring up, and this might be where we get into more detail on using the AI, excuse me, AI art. I have had situations where I've had artists, and I'm a little too honest. I like to pay for my art up front as opposed to when it gets delivered. And I've had two occasions where I've paid for art that never got delivered. And in one case,
Mm.
what got delivered was really rough sketches with no coherency. I was told they could do it in a month. It took over a year with me almost begging to get the art from them. And I paid them upfront $1,000 and
Yeah.
got art that was useless. With AI art, that you de-risk that situation as a small independent game designer to costs that you can control when it comes to your subscription to an AI bot. Again, I'm not making an argument for or against. I'm just telling you my personal experience, and that was just the worst case. I had another one that cost me $500, so I'm $1,500 in the hole paying
Yeah.
professional artists that I never received my art on.
And we all those problems or challenges when it comes to AI artwork, they are not there really.
Yeah,
You
and there's
you
probably
you
different issues there, but yeah, yeah. Anyway, again, I would love to have a conversation. I want to, what I really like to do is get some artists that work in this field
Mhm.
and get some of their feedback because, like Niels,
Yeah.
I love his work. I want to use him. If I can afford it, I would, without a doubt, because he's on a whole nother level that I have not seen um, a bot do. No, unless there's a special Niels Johansson bot. But I there's and again, I'm dipping into this topic, and I'll just shut my mouth. We can talk about it another week because again, there's a lot that can be said on that.
So I will try to sort of wrap up this artwork conversation. People that follow this channel may be familiar. They may have seen Toot Toot game. Forgive me for bringing this up, but so if I am amateur desktop person, I still I still feel like when you compare the games, the postcard cards for the first gem and the Toot Toot, I'm trying to create my own artwork in a way. So my own artwork is basically copy pasting the vase paintings this time and kind of uh, mm, 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 place them copy paste them onto the counters and like.
Mhm.
Once again, I would like to think that as long as I am using the pictures of the vases that are under open license, that there is no problem with this sort of artwork being commercialized. And if I do it as a designer, I'm kind of, forgive me, artists, I'm kind of cutting you off. If my visual concept for the game prevails in the publishing process, then this is just another person that I do not have to pay, because I can provide, for example, my own clip art, my own NATO symbols, my own counters, my
Mhm.
own anything.
Yeah, it's like I said. I think it's a sticky subject, especially it, I don't think anybody begrudges you or I scribbling our art. And I'll speak for myself because your
Mhm.
art is beautiful, by the way, what I've seen. Um, Even if I'm copying somebody's style, there's really not an issue with that. And so that's kind of my first option, except that, like most people, I'm super critical of my own work. And I go, that's ugly, right? And so I don't want to publish my game with my art because I don't think that we talked earlier about how art can bring you into the illusion and the enjoyment and the imagination that's going on in your head, and art drives that, and it's non-trivial. And there are artists who know how to do that. And we were talking about Neil's on one of the episodes, and we said he's a gamer that understands how to visually present data for your game,
Yeah.
and he does it. Here we go.
Conjured indeed.
How's it
Welcome.
going, boss? Hey, about an hour ago, Ryszard had said sexy, and I said, okay, that means hex to hex at some point tonight is probably going to show up.
Now
Prophecy fulfilled.
it will be our ongoing tradition from now on, that one of us, maybe me, maybe specifically me, I have to utter the magic word.
Uh, what you missed was what I just said, Jeff, that Ryszard had said sexy. Oh my God, can I say that on your show? And I said, well, now that you said sexy, hex to hex is going to probably show up at some point. And so here you are, prophecy fulfilled.
And besides, we talked a little bit about experiences in co-designing, in
Yeah.
the card game, making card games and using spreadsheets for that purpose, and some other bits, including AI artwork. So we were pretty eclectic.
Yeah, we
We still
didn't.
are.
I still have a lot to talk about when it comes to card design and some of my
Mhm.
philosophy that we wanted to talk about tonight. But as we normally do, which I unapologetically, we kind of let our conversations grow generically, or generic is the wrong word, right? What am I looking for?
Naturally, it
Naturally,
naturally continued onto different paths. And
yeah, organic. That's the word, not generic. Organic. The jokes aren't funny if you have to explain the punchline, and neither is the intelligence if you can't come across as intelligent, which I'm failing miserably at.
glasses help, and the bow tie, not necessarily the golden one.
Okay. So you know now you've thrown down the gauntlet. I'm going to have to go get a bow tie.
Oh no, we are dressing up on the screen.
Well, look, I have a collared shirt on tonight,
Yeah, yeah,
and I
halfway
didn't
there,
expect you
halfway
to
there.
show up with a colored shirt and a bow
Oh,
tie. So not only did you tie me with the colored shirt, you one upped me with the, and it's not just a bow tie. As we said before, it's a golden bow tie.
amazing. Well,
Yeah,
certainly unexpected. Yes.
it says with sexy hair, it would be orgasmic. Oh God, we avoided going down that path, Mike, until uh, the
As a
tie is
design,
doing it for him.
as a designer, I would rather have players talk like this about my designs, so I just do not want to use those words myself.
Oh, you don't want to describe your game as sexy or orgasmic. You want the players to do it. Fair enough.
No, because no one would believe me. Why would they?
Oh, you have a face I could trust. You could be a politician. I would vote for you.
That may be very well true, but what I really talk about is the word of the mouth. What I would really like as a budding designer is the word of the mouth about the designs that I am responsible for, instead of me trying to convey that this is the design that does this or that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And just um, yeah, no, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I was
don't
going to
worry.
say something, and I went, "No, let's not." Stream of consciousness is not always a good thing.
The part of this conversation tonight will be continued tomorrow,
Yep.
when this game that we talked about that brought us tonight will be actually shown and demonstrated. And I once before the time will be over, I just want to say that you, Hisi, you mentioned that people can purchase tabletop simulator, but actually to see the game being played, you will not need to have tabletop simulator.
No, good point.
Just
Good point.
just tune in to the channel and you will be able to see and comment just as well.
No, that's a good point. If you just want to join us and watch, you don't need Tabletop Simulator. If you want to actually play with us, which you're more than welcome to do, because the game will go up to at least 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we have 5, I'll sit out. I don't need to. I can play another time.
The designer can also sit out. Don't worry.
It's true, but it's kind of. Oh, and Hex is asking what this game is. You want to give him a quick synopsis?
Oh, the long title is At the Court of the Great King, a card game for between 2 to 4 people. The card game about gaining victory points or glory points at the court of the Hellenistic king of Seleucid dynasty Antioch III. So players play as factions on the court and they try to get the most influence by the time the game ends.
Boom.
Playing
Elevator.
cards and performing actions.
Okay, so just for reference, Meandering Mike says sometimes I just spurt out the humor, and Nagawa says as long as that's all you're spurting out, Mike. I agree 100% with that statement. And we're not going to go any further on that. Anyway, guys, I want to first of all, as always, Ryszard, thank you so much for coming on tonight, sharing your
My
thoughts on
pleasure.
the game and just your thoughts on what we do in general. You want to answer that for him?
Seleucid. This is the name of the dynasty that came after Seleucus Nicator, the Syrian dynasty. Battle of Magnesia. So yes, Hellenistic monarchy after the death of Alexander the Great, one of the surviving Hellenistic kingdoms that were wiped out because of Roman Republic that I hate. I have personal feelings.
What did they ever do to you?
So nothing, but once again, if people are passionate about the period, they one of the what if questions is how would our modern world would look like if Roman Republic would not go into the Roman Empire,
Mm-hmm.
which means that you have those political entities like Carthage, for example, surviving. How would medieval times look like if that would be the case? But
Okay.
this is the of this podcast, but not tonight, not
not
tonight.
not tonight, exactly. So as always, Ryszard, thank you very much for coming on the show. You know you're always welcome here, my friend. And we didn't get into a lot of personal stuff. You got some exciting things coming in October. I wish you the best. You're going to make a great
Thank you.
dad. And just saying, you're going to be awesome at it. And with that, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. At some point, I'm going to write everybody's name so I can do the Miss Marianne on, oh my God, Romper Room. And I see Jeffy, and I see Meandering Mike, and I see Nagewa, and I see New York Raider fan. I'm trying to go off memory here. You get the idea, guys. I appreciate every single one of you that shows up and watches what we do here on the channel. Thank you so much. And again, last pitch tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Pacific time. We're going to get together and play the Court of the Great King, and you're more than welcome to join us. Until then, good night, everybody.